All righty. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to begin by thanking our presenters from the ACLU and Cheerla, who I will be introducing in just a moment. I want to start by first stating our communities, especially our immigrant communities, are rightfully scared right now. We've seen cruel and aggressive federal actions in our community. We've seen people taken off the streets and from homes and places of work. We've seen unusual behavior by people claiming to be federal agents, but they are hiding their faces and not displaying their names or badge numbers. We don't know if they are real law enforcement or vigilantes. And that's why I authored legislation called the No Vigilantes Act, SB 805, that would require all police in California to identify themselves either by name or badge number and ban the use of bounty hunters from immigration operations. I'm also authoring the SAFE Act, which would provide a warning to school communities, including parents of students, if immigration enforcement authorities show up on school or college campuses. We want to do all we can to inform and protect every Californian. Finally, before we begin with the presentation, please know that this town hall and these documents you'll see are for general information purposes only. The California State Senate is not responsible for the content of this non-Senate document, and its presence does not constitute legal advice by the Senate. If you need legal advice, please contact an attorney. It is extremely important to address what is going on in our communities, which is why we have gathered here to help you all. It is critical that we look out for one another. Now, I want to get into some quick housekeeping rules before we get started with our webinar. For those who are unable to join us tonight, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to my website at sd25.senate.ca.gov. I'll repeat that again, sd25.senate.ca.gov. This webinar also has translated captioning services with 35 languages available at the bottom of your screen. Please submit your questions you have for our panelists using the Q&A feature, which we will be answering during the last 15 minutes of this webinar. They will be anonymous to the public for the safety of our viewers. So I want to repeat that again. Anybody asking a question will be anonymous. With all that being said, it is my extreme honor to introduce our panelists for today. From the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, Los Angeles, or CHEERLA, Winston Leyva is the Community Education Programs Manager who has offered countless workshops for immigrants seeking a pathway to citizenship, as well as Know Your Rights workshops. Additionally, we have Luis Nolasco from the American Civil Liberties Union of Southern California, who will be explaining the necessary actions to take as a bystander or witness, followed by the steps to take if someone you know has been detained by federal law enforcement agents. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Winston to begin our presentation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Senator Pérez, and I want to thank also your staff, your amazing staff, for giving us this space and opportunity to engage our community that really needs this information. I also want to thank our strong partners, such as our colleague Luis from the American Civil Liberties Union. And so thank you so much. And let's start with the presentation. And I do also, before I start that, I do want to reiterate your previous point that this information that we will be providing, it's not to be construed as a legal advice. And so this is purely informational. And so shall we start now? All right. So I first would like to start with thanking our community for taking the time to also allow us to bring this crucial information, especially during these times. And I want to start also by emphasizing that you as a community member, I want you guys to know that you guys are not alone. Cheerla is with you. We will continue fighting the way we have done for the past nearly 40 years. So What are we going to discuss this afternoon? It would be what some of the recent changes, current situations, and risks, but also how we, as an organization, we are spearheading the fight against this cruel attacks against our most vulnerable communities. We're going to discuss what constitutional rights we have and to whom these constitutional rights apply, and what can we do when if we encounter ICE officers in three possible scenarios? But also part of actually Cheerless motto is prepare to stay. And one way to that we can be better prepared to stay is having a family plan. So that's another very important point that we want to share with you, and how to build and have this family plan so that we are better prepared. For those who haven't heard who Chirla is, Chirla was founded in 1986. So we are nearing 40 years of service, community uh, supporting in our communities. And our mission is and has been since to create a much more just and inclusive society uh, for groups such as our immigrant community. And the way we do this is precisely by this sharing information, and through information empowering our communities. um, and that's how we have been spearheading this fight, but also advancing what the mission and what we envision as a society, and how crucial our community, our immigrant community, is to the foundation of this country. I wanted to share, and especially during this challenging times, that even in the most challenging times, when we come and we come together, um, not only organizations, partners, public key and robust networks, we are able to accomplish some victories and be able to push back against any attacks. And this is just an example of what we've done, thanks to your support as a community, but also thanks to the support of strong partners, um, faith-based and community-based organizations, that we have actually been able to pass some key legislations uh, that has empower more our community and those communities that we serve. Additionally, some of the this is just a small and short list of some of the legislative victories that we have actually accomplished here in California. Uh, and this is to once again highlight and remind us that although we have been attacked, it is crucial that all of us actually are informed, well informed, prepare, but also collectively we push back against this cruel attacks and so forth. So, for those asking, um, what are the most recent changes? And these are the two main changes that are of concern, great concern, especially for our immigrant community. And that is one, the Big Beautiful Bill that was actually signed on July 4th of this year. And essentially, what this new legislation aims to do is to escalate the escalation of ICE enforcement internally in the U.S. It also designed to expand the immigration centers and hiring new ICE officers. In addition to, or in response to uh, legislations against by this administration that are aimed at against our communities, um, we want our community also to understand and know that we are doing what we can, and everybody is pushing back, and we will be pushing back when necessary, and as much as we can. And that is in the form. Last week there was the temporary restraining order uh, on July the 11th. And what this essentially means for our community is that since then, ICE officers must have reasonable suspicion to stop uh, persons just randomly in the streets the way they've done it before, and that detainees now would have access to legal services. This is only a temporary restraining order, and it's into effect only until the 24, unless there's more challenges. But we will be discussing this as more news develop and so forth, and share that with you. Now, for those asking, how is Cheerla as an organization? How are these community based organizations? What we are Cheerla, we how we're pushing back is primarily, and we've done it for the past nearly 40 years, is three ways. One is advocating, educating, and organizing. This has been by far the pillars that we want our community to know and see that we are and we will continue pushing back against these cruel attacks against our communities by informing, empowering our communities, and collectively uh, passing an envision and creating that society that is more just and inclusive for our immigrant community. So one of the main points in this presentation that we want each and every one of you to learn and really emphasize is that all of us have rights, regardless of what your immigration status is. And this is truly, truly very important that we understand and that we learn and we share this information with our loved ones, neighbors, coworkers, and so forth. These are we have as even as immigrants, we have rights, despite of what the this administration attempts to say. That, but we all have rights, and those rights are applicable to even someone who has no immigration legal status. And so it is essential that we as an immigrant community, we understand what these rights are. So let's talk about what these rights are. The most important right that we need to understand and learn is that all of us, regardless of what our immigration status is, we have the right to remain silent. Now, why is this crucial? Because again, if we interact with an ICE officer, the law does not obligate a person to answer questions that may incriminate you. For instance, if you encounter ICE officers will probably ask you about whether you were born in this country or country of origin, or if you have any immigration legal status. And it is important that we, as an immigrant community, we understand that despite of whether you came a year ago, whether you came 10 years ago or 50 years ago, and you don't have any immigration legal status, nevertheless, it is important that we understand that we can exercise this right to remain silent and that we're not obligated to answer questions that will incriminate ourselves uh, or offer any information that may actually lead the officer to know whether we are here legally or illegally. And so that is very, very important that we understand, and we need to, and I can't emphasize enough that we need to understand that we have this right, and we don't need to ask for this right to immigration. This right is granted to us the moment we actually are in this country. So that's very important. Another right that I wanted to share is that of refuse any unreasonable search. That is that when we interact with ICE officers, the only two possible ways that an ICE officer may actually determine what is the immigration status of a person is only if the person actually offers information that will that will lead that officer to believe that the person is it's not documented. Or the second way would be if you provide any documentation of your country of origin to avoid incriminating ourselves, either orally, providing information that we're not supposed to ICE officers, or to avoid providing any documentation. We need to remind ourselves that we have those two rights. One is the right to remain silent, and you're not obligated to answer questions pertaining to your country, your birth of country, or your immigration status. Number two, the other right, once again, is that you have the right to refuse any search, any unreasonable search. And these two are essential rights that we can exercise so that we can protect ourselves and not offer information pertaining to our immigration legal status. It is also important that we also need to remind our community that it is very, very important not to lie to an immigration officer either, because this can be considered a crime. And so it is important that we do not lie in order to avoid lying. And perhaps thinking that it might just get us out of the problem. Instead, what we need to do is once again remember that we have the right to remain silent, and that we also have the right to refuse to be searched. Those two are very, very important. As a reminder, and again, we want to remind our community that do not offer information about your immigration status. Do not offer it. They may ask you any questions about your immigration status, and you're not obligated to answer. You have the right to speak to an attorney, and so it is crucial that you prepare yourself ahead of time. Make the consultations as soon as you're able to consult with a licensed and trusted immigration attorney. And we will later on in this presentation, we will be providing information where you can also get referrals and so forth. So it is important. So once we understand what rights we have, even as immigrants, even for those who may not have any immigration legal status or any immigration legal protections, it is important now to learn how we apply these rights in three possible scenarios where we may interact with ICE officers. And the first scenario is at home. What do I do? What can we do as a community? So the first rule is if ICE officers come to your home, the number one rule, and I want to overemphasize on this, do not open the door. And more importantly, do not even open the door with a security chain on or any safety chain or any lock that you can slightly open the door. You do not open the door, not even 1 centimeter, not 1 inch. The reason being is because if you attempt to open the door, even 1 centimeter, the the officers may interpret that as a consent, and that's what you don't want. You don't want to provide or create this situation or circumstances to allow the officer to misinterpret or interpret consent so they can come in without the proper warrants. Number one, if they do come to your house, remember it is crucial, do not open the door on any circumstances. However, if they do claim, they knocking on the door, yelling or telling you that they do have a warrant, then the next step, and to avoid opening the door, you ask the officers to slide the warrant under the door. And that way you avoid opening the door, you avoid letting them come in, and you're able to check and verify if indeed is a warrant. It is a valid warrant that would allow them to come into your house. It is very, very important, that second step. Once again, do not open the door. If they do have a warrant, ask them to slide and share that warrant under the door and verify which type of order, which now brings us to another hugely important point, which is, let's talk about those warrants, because this crucial paper will really make a difference whether we make a mistake and let them in or not. And so let's talk about what warrants we're talking about. So what you see, this one is a judicial warrant. This judicial warrant has certain powers, but it is also important, and it is our responsibility as a community to learn what to look for, even if ICE officers come to our home and present us this judicial warrant. It's very crucial to go over certain characteristics. The number one is that if you guys see on the top, the title says, we'll say something to the extent of district court or court, meaning that the document, this warrant, was extended by a judge from a court. The second characteristic is that it has to match the name, correct address, but also in the middle of the document, you'll find the date that this warrant was issued. Now, this is hugely important because this judicial warrant, while it allows ICE officers to enter, for instance, your home or your home or the workplace, these judicial warrants are only valid for 14 days. And this is very, very important. And lastly, I also want to bring to your attention that at the very bottom right-hand corner, you'll find a signature. This signature, it is from a judge, and it has to be from a judge. This is what makes a judicial warrant valid, and this will allow ICE officers to enter your house. Conversely, and the opposite to this, What I'm showing now is what it's called the administrative order. And why is this important? This order looks not only looks different than the one we just discussed, but also it is simply meaningless. And this is one of the administrative order. It's called the ICE administrative order. And this is what ICE officers have actually used in the past and often use. Try to fool our community, try to entice our community, try to trick our community into letting them in to private homes. And so it is crucial that we as a community, we're able to identify which one is which and understand which one carries powers and which ones don't carry any power. And so, for instance, the administrative order that we're looking at right now, this one, I want to bring your attention to the very top, to the title of it. It says the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And on the right, it says warrant for arrest of an alien. Now, this administrative order may have the date, may also have the name, may also have the address, um, where it's being executed. Nevertheless, I want to bring your attention to the middle part, which says signed by. These administrative orders are signed either by a supervisor, an I supervisor, and it's not signed by a judge. This is hugely important to understand that this ICE administrative order is not signed by a judge, and therefore, with this warrant, ICE officers cannot and may not be able to come into your home, or legally speaking, they may not be allowed to come into your home. Let's compare the two now. This is, once again, I want to overemphasize this, that we learn to identify the two types of warrants. The one on the left, as we discussed earlier, we talked about what the judicial warrant is, the one on your left hand side. And I want to go back and bring to your attention also the title, that the title, it will say something to the extent that it was issued from a court. In the middle, you'll find what it's the date, and we need to remember that the date, it's only valid, the judicial warrant is only valid for 14 days from the day it was signed. And lastly, at the very bottom, is signed by a judge. On the right hand side, however, we see and we have, which is called the ICE administrative order. And I want to once again overemphasize is that ICE have used repeatedly this type of warrant, the one on the right, the ICE administrative order. And this order does not allow ICE officers to come into our homes. So if you see it, ICE comes to your house showing you what is called an ICE administrative order, they cannot come to your home, do not allow them in. And it's crucial that we understand how and why it's important, and then to know what this two warrants, what they look like, and what powers they carry. We discuss what to do if ICE officers come to our home. How about this? Let's talk now about what can I do if ICE comes to my workplace. Well, number one, the immigration judge can and will um, uh, immigration agents, they need to have a search warrant. In other words, the warrant that they need to have to come over the workplace is that of the judicial warrant. And once again, since we learned what a judicial warrant is, we now know that judicial warrants allow them to also come into the workplace. However, what we can do is the number one recommendation is to please remain calm. Now, I'll be the first one to admit that it will be a little challenging and hard to remain calm, even at the workplace, seeing ICE officers coming in, storming in. Nevertheless, the reason why you want to keep calm is because we do not want to we don't want to give probable cause or a cause for an immigration officer. If we try to run or escape, we don't want to create that situation in that scenario where then the ICE officer then will come after us and detain us. So it is also an equally crucial that we also need to learn what applied and be able to apply what we just learned, which is what rights do we have? Our community, it's important that we know that we still, even if we are found at our workplace and ICE comes, it is important that even if they have a judicial warrant, we inside our workplace, we can still exercise our constitutional rights. And what are those rights? What are the two rights that we learn? Well, number one is the right of to remain silent. Yes, that is true. So if ICE officers come to the workplace and you can exercise the right to remain silent, you can also exercise the second constitutional rights that applies to any person despite or regardless of their immigration status, which is that right to refuse to be searched. And so those two rights can still be exercised and assert even if you're at the workplace and you see eyes coming in. So let's talk about the third and possible scenario. This is the one that has created so much fear, and rightly so, from our community because of the cruelty of the uh, from this mask officers or people really just nabbing our community members and so forth. So what can I do? What to do in a public place? I must remind each and every one of you that once again, if we found ourselves in a public space and we see ice, it is very important that if you're approached on the street without any proper warrant, um, essentially the officer cannot arrest you just simply because of the way you look. Nevertheless, we have seen, and we admit that we have seen many disturbing images where people are just being detained and taken. Nevertheless, it is important that we understand that we have the right to, once again, to remain silent. Do not offer any information pertaining to your immigration status. If you don't have any immigration status or protection, do not offer any information. You have the right, even in public, in a public place, you have the right to assert or exercise your constitutional rights. Once again, and those two rights are: one, the right to remain silent. You don't need to answer any questions, and the other right is to refuse any unreasonable searches. Additionally, never inform the officer once again about your immigration status, or, for example, how you enter, in what fashion you enter the United States. Do not offer that information. How long have you been here? No, no, not even that. And so it is also crucial that we want to remind our communities that it's not a good idea to carry any fake documents with you, because that may exacerbate the problem. So these are the some of the recommendations, and um, one way that we need to be reminded that even if we find ourselves in a public space, we still can exercise those constitutional rights that we, even as immigrants, can assert if we interact with ICE officers. There has been questions, and this is truly important, that we as Californians, and proud Californians, where we as a state, we are proud to celebrate diversity. Contrary to what this administration says and stands for, we stand here as Californians, we stand for diversity, and we recognize every community and the contributions. And because of that, we want our community to know that about SB 54, which is the California Values Act. Now, this act, or this legislation, state legislation, went into effect back in January 1st of 2018. Now, this was in response also to the attacks during the first term of this administration that went after our communities and started attacking our communities. And we as Californians came together, and we were able to pass, in response to those attacks as well, what is called as SB 54, the California Values Act. There's also AB 4, which is another statewide legislation. It's the California Trust Act that went into effect in 2014. And most recently, the city of Los Angeles, the city council ordinance that was passed just last year, November 19, 24, where we officially were declared that we were a sanctuary city. Now, let's refocus on what SB 54, the California Values Act, does or provides to us as Californians. Well, again, it went into effect in January 2018, and essentially, the SB 54 clearly state that state and local resources are not used to assist the enforcement of federal immigration law. That's what really and the goal of SB 54 was. And what also does is that it limits the the police, the local police agencies such as LAPD, sheriffs, and so forth, in that they cannot ask about your immigration status. And this is crucial and very important that each of us as Californians, we understand that SB 54 is in effect, it has been in effect since 2018, and it is crucial that we learn that local police officers or local police agencies cannot ask about your immigration status, and they cannot arrest you solely for having a deportation order. And in addition, SB 54 also um, has limit and put other limitations on the local police. For instance, they cannot hold a person in jail for extra time just for immigration agents to be picked up and so forth. The only exception and caveat to that is for those certain crimes considered heinous crimes and so forth. But it is crucial that once again that we understand as a community that in addition to the rights and constitutional rights that I can assert and exercise, there's also some statewide protections that we have collectively as California have pushed and passed, adding an additional layer of protection for our communities. Now, as an organization, when we our motto has been, especially is prepared to state, because we believe and we that we're not going anywhere as a community, as an immigrant community, and so part of being prepared, it's also having a family, and it's not just knowing our rights. So it is crucial that we, even more so today, uh, it's very important that we have a family plan. And what does that family plan entails? Well, before we go into that, this is very crucial, and I want to remind our folks joining us this afternoon is that it's what you learn here. We also want you to share this information with family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and so forth. The more information, the better, the more prepared we are. And if you do have children, for instance, you can also prepare a caregiver affidavits or declarations. You gather information or important documents and keep them in an accessible place. This is what the family plan or prepare family plan means, is not only to gather the important documents and keep them in an accessible place for every adult in that household, but also it is crucial that we find and we are prepared by knowing and having a phone number of an immigration attorney. If you guys don't have or you need referrals, you can certainly reach out to Chirla, and I will be sharing the number where you can call, or you can also reach out to other organizations that can also provide you some referrals. But it is crucial that part of this plan, this preparedness plan, is that we have information of more than one attorney. Make sure that your family knows also, for those who may have actually gone in through an immigration process or may have done an immigration process in the past. When a person does a process or any process with immigration assigns what it's called an alien number. So for those who have actually done certain processes with immigration in the past, it is important to have written down what your alien number is as part of that plan, so that the other adults in your household have access to that in the event that is needed, or if you're detained and so forth. Part of this being prepared and having this family plan includes, as I mentioned earlier, it's important information that the entire family, all the adults who live in that household, it's important that they have access and they know, namely numbers, names, date of births of everyone living in the house, phone numbers of your children's school, for instance, the doctors, the children's doctors, right? The workplace, the spouse workplace, and so forth. It is crucial that also we list even details related to perhaps our children's medications, any allergies, and so forth. Information also includes, for example, that we important documents, where we keep them safe in one single place that is accessible. And this includes birth, marriage certificates, social security cards for those that have some, identification cards, the A number, as I mentioned before. And this is crucial for those parents also who may not have any immigration protection. And in the worst case scenario, both parents are detained. It's very, very important, and I recognize that is a hard conversation to have. But we as parents, if we have U.S. born children, and we as parents, if we don't have any immigration legal protections, it is important to identify someone in the event that you both choose so, to identify someone to care for your child or your children, and someone who is a responsible adult that knows exactly what to do in the event that either one parent or the two parents are detained. So this is part of being prepared and the list of documentations that will make you better prepared and be able to respond accordingly in the worst case scenarios. It is crucial also that now with technology from our phones, we can actually locate family members or friends who are detained. And this is information uh, uh, pertaining to the local field offices, ICE legal field offices that in LA County, San Diego, San Francisco. Uh, and on your right, you'll see the picture of what it's called the online detainee locator system. This is where we, with certain information, we can locate someone who has been detained by ICE. Now, we can do this online. You can do it from your phone. And if you don't have time to write it down, don't worry. I'll refer you to our website where you can find all this information, all documentation that can be downloadable in your language, so that you can then start building your family plan. And let's talk about also another point, and this is also very important. We start seeing that there are people, unscrupulous people, who may want to take advantage of us, especially during these crucial times, we as immigrants, because it is important also that we understand and be alert on what it's called the immigration fraud. So we as we as a community, it's important to distinguish between who the who are the notaries versus who are trusted licensed immigration attorneys. In essence, what we need to watch out for is that notaries here in the US are not qualified and they're not prepared to take or carry over any immigration case. Only a licensed immigration attorney. It is crucial that we distinguish these two professionals, so that we do not become victims of fraud. And to avoid becoming a victim of fraud, visit lawyers who are accredited. Seek more than one opinion if you already actually seen one or spoken to a licensed attorney before making a final decision. It is also important that to avoid becoming a victim of fraud, immigration fraud, do not pay for immigration forms. These immigration forms can be downloaded; they're for free, so they're at no fee. If you do hire an immigration attorney, you have the right, because you're paying for services, to request a contract. And that contract can be also drafted in your native language, so that you understand what you're signing for, what services are expected from your attorney. So these steps help us avoid becoming victims of fraud. And it's crucially important. As for a copy of your application, if your attorney submits anything, demand to return all of your original documents. And also, it is truly important that if you do get text potentially uh, indicating that they're from immigration, USCIS, which is the most common agency that does immigration processes, they do not use this form of communication. So ignore those. And once again, this point and immigration fraud, it's hugely important that we also alert. And now, having understanding and know what to be alert on, which is if you know, or you have become, or you have been a victim of immigration fraud, I want you to know that you can certainly make a report. you can report this, and you can certainly do it the statewide or even federal level. And this information here, these are the numbers where you can call if you have been a victim of fraud, immigration fraud. You can certainly report this, and it's hugely important. Now, if you don't have the time right now to write it down, do not worry. I will give you one single number when you can call and request all this information to you. And lastly, I do want to also share with you that if you can visit what we discuss in this presentation, from how to prepare a family plan, the caregiver's authorization affidavit, from what list of documentation is important to have, to also those famous pocket size rights cards, right? Both in Spanish and English and another language. You can certainly download all these informational materials from our website. They're downloadable to your phone, to your computer, and so forth. And you can also, we ask you to share it as much as you can with colleagues and neighbors. And with this, I now come to the end of my side of the presentation. And once again, I want to remind our community that you guys are not alone. Um, we um, we will continue pushing, but also this information can be downloadable from our website. And further, we will go ahead and show you where you can call us if you have any questions and so forth. So now I would like to hand it over to my colleague, Luis.
Thank you so much, Winston. Let me share my screen. Okay, that works, right? Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. My name is Luis Nolasco. I'm with the ACLU of Southern California. That's the American Civil Liberties Union. We are a nonprofit civil rights organization that has been around for more than 100 years now, really dedicated to upholding everybody's constitutional rights. We have been doing this work here in Southern California with essentially our founding back to the days of the dock workers with Upton Sinclair in the 1920s. So, you know, the ACLU has been very busy these past few months with everything happening. And so the hope to share here today is just a little bit more about your rights when it comes to participating in a protest or recording law enforcement, including ICE. So the first thing I'll say here is, what are your rights with recording ICE interactions? So under the First Amendment, everybody is entitled and has the right to record law enforcement, which includes ICE agents, while they're doing and essentially acting in their official duties, right? So where can people do and record and kind of collect this information? So in public places and private places, there is that legal right. I think with this huge caveat, so long as you're not interfering or impeding an officer's law enforcement activities. So there's no clear definition of what we mean by interfering or impeding, unfortunately, but essentially what the case law has suggested is that so long as the person is not sort of impeding or getting interfering with the duties of the officer, or you're too close to them or getting in the way or refusing to adhere to instructions to back away, that's kind of like what you know, has been interpreted as this. So always the advice here is you know, make sure to take a step back and have a good distance from the officers. You know, I think the utmost thing to remember here is you have this right. Just kind of keep that distance to keep yourself safe in these interactions. We'll go to the next slide. So what to do if they want to search your phone? So again, kind of a lot of the rights that Winston was talking about, particularly the Fourth Amendment, right? That privacy and not consenting to searches, those rights, those constitutional rights extend to your phone. So law enforcement may not search your phone without a judicial warrant. So those rights extend to that. So, and you will also have the right, if a police officer, ICE agent, right, were to come up to you and request for you to delete or review whatever you caught on camera, that those rights are protected under the Constitution. But again, this is the reality of the situation, right, where you may not, you know, you have these rights, right? But law enforcement may ask or coerce you to unlock your phone with your fingerprint or face. Doesn't mean that it's okay or right, but this is something that we know could happen. And so the sort of best practices here that we always provide to the community is to avoid fingerprinting ID and Face ID to unlock your phone. And secure your phone with at least a 6-digit passcode. That 6-digit passcode has sort of withstood the sort of privacy protections. So it's basically been in courts, right? They've said and argued that like the fingerprint ID and the forcing of a Face ID are not okay, but essentially that's not as protected as a 6-digit passcode. So just a recommendation, right, that we should all kind of in this era have these digital safety practices and engage in it. So, you know, there's multiple documents out there, but particularly around this one, it's around EFFs with Electronic Frontier Foundation. They have a surveillance self-defense guide that really kind of walks you through. You don't have to be a tech expert by any means. They do an amazing job at really walking you through on how to better protect your phone from surveillance and also kind of just digitally secure your phone. More importantly, too, I forgot to mention that unless law enforcement cannot search your phone unless they have a judicial warrant. Again, super important. We're going back to all the things that Winston was talking about, right? The Fourth Amendment, you have these rights. Let's make sure to enforce them. Going back to this slide here, I think something super important too that I always mention in all my presentations is, you know, this, and I think there was a question kind of sort of alluding to this as well, that despite, you know, us having, you know, this First Amendment right to record, Fourth, Fifth Amendment rights, I think it's really up to us and your individual sort of situation on how you enforce them, right? So there is a very real reality that law enforcement could retaliate against you. So, you know, something that I always say is just because you have the right doesn't mean that law enforcement is always going to uphold that right. And so, you know, we've seen this, right? That law enforcement, including ICE, may retaliate with arrests, destruction of phones and devices that you have, and at times bodily harm. And so in enforcing your rights, right, I think the other important thing to remember in how you're enforcing them and knowing your rights is be mindful about these possibilities. And most importantly, right, with all these interactions with law enforcement, for you to be safe and alert. The most important thing is your personal safety, and everybody's sort of nexus on what safety is to you is very different, right? Safety for me is going to be very different from what safety is to Winston. And so when you're doing these things, right, for example, reporting law enforcement, some people may have a high risk tolerance and may be willing to risk that, but right, but there's situations where, you know, if you have someone close to you that is a non-citizen or has a vulnerable immigration status, you know, maybe it is the best situation to stop filming together in order, you know, in order to avoid creating more tension between law enforcement, including ICE. So again, this is information so that you all can play at these scenarios based on your own sort of situation and your own circumstances, right? Because these rights and how you show up in certain places is going to be different too. If there's different considerations like your immigration status. So again, it's really important. Always be safe and alert. That's the most important thing, right? Get out of these situations alive, get home safe, practice your rights safely is an important thing that I always like to remember and kind of communicate to our community. Again, with protesting, that's, you know, I think is something that we always encourage, right? You have this right to go out to the streets and protest. Dissent is patriotic, right? It's one of the slogans that the ACLU often says and kind of encourages people to take to the streets and show up enforcing your First Amendment rights. So in this graph here, this is just, I'm sure folks have seen different iterations of this, but this is just kind of like best practices on what to bring to a protest. The most important thing I'll note here is not to bring any foreign country identification. So this is especially important for non-citizen individuals, that you don't carry, if you're going to a protest, and generally, I mean, just generally always should not carry these out of precaution. But foreign country IDs, such as matrículas consulares, a consular ID, your foreign passport, these documents can be used by immigration agencies to deduct where you're from if they were to find this information on you. And so it's just sort of a best practice, right? To, if you have these things, totally okay, maybe leave it at home, right? If it's for the purpose of identification and you're able to, California does have access to licenses for all, right? So, perhaps bring your California ID with you. That's a better sort of identification tool for, law enforcement and just general interactions. And if you have these passports or things like that, leave it at home. Kind of to Winston's point, right? Always have like the important number saved in your head. If you're going out to a protest, like, and if you have an attorney, write it on your hand, right? Like, just so that you don't forget it. I know that in the digital era, including myself, I'm often forgetting phone numbers, right? Because we all have them on our cell phones. So just remember those important phone numbers. Your attorney's information, that is the most important thing that you should remember at all times. And then again, just some other things to consider. I think a lot of us here have potentially been to a protest or so in the past couple of months, right? So just protect your phones, always super important, especially if you're going to be recording, do that 6-digit ID code. And then just don't bring things that you would not want to be caught with if you're at a protest. When it comes to a protest, again, these are some of the things that you are allowed to do. So you can distribute leaflets, flyers, other literature on your own property or public sidewalks, parks, plazas. You can picket protests on public sidewalks, parks, plazas, so long as these things are not being blocked. So as long as you're not blocking the entrances, and you can chant, sing protest songs on public sidewalks, parks, and plazas. What you may not do, and is not covered under the First Amendment, is block access to sidewalks or buildings, disrupt counter-protesters, engage in speech that is obscene, which makes knowingly false statements of fact, or is likely to incite immediate disruptive or dangerous disturbance. The definition of obscene here, I think, is important, right? Because the courts basically have said it has to be speech that is portraying offensive material, sexual conduct, or something in that way. And so, for example, if a person were to say F the president or elected official, that's not obscene and is something that is legally protected. Again, you might able to be marching the streets without a permit in some jurisdictions, but you may be required to follow traffic rules. So it's always advisable for you to check with your local city and just kind of see kind of what are the rights when it comes to protesting. So that is the presentation on my end, and I will hand it back to Winston to give us information about the very important number that everybody should remember to call for Chirla.
Thank you, Luis. And yes, in fact, indeed, I would like to invite our communities and our viewers to go ahead and call if you have questions, if you have emergencies, questions, any type of question, and you need referrals. You also can call this number, the Cheerless Immigrant Assistance Line, to report ICE operations. So if for those who, as my colleague, as Lisa pointed out, for those who may be asking how they can best help, how can they support this, our communities, you can certainly go ahead and call this number to report ICE operations. But once again, this is a number where if you need referrals related to, for instance, access to legal services, at cost or no cost. And this is the Rapid Response Network, and this is the number once again that you can call. And lastly, we also would like to invite you to follow us on social media platforms, and follow our colleagues from ACLU, where these are reliable information. I know that there has been a lot of misinformation creating more fear, but it is crucial, and we can overemphasize enough that we want to invite our communities to choose a reliable source of information so that we are better informed and better prepared. And with that, we come to the conclusion of this presentation, and I guess we can open the floor for Q&As.
Yeah, I can kind of go maybe through some of what we've the questions that we've received here. Sharing the slides, I think there is already an answer to that. I think those will be shared on the senator's website. Sharing information on Churla. Hopefully that question was answered. Attendee, follow Churla. Hopefully you wrote that number down. For the Q&A session at the end of the talks. With all these rights, why are so many people still being detained without being let out?
Why are so many people being detained without being let out? So there is what we have learned, and it seems to be that when someone is detained, it's taking somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks for ICE to actually process the detainee, the person being detained, to process them for up to 2 to 3 weeks, and we think that it's intentional to limit the person who has been detained to to have access to legal representation, and so that has created also a lot of uncertainty, and also a lot of fear in our communities, because once again we have seen that it seems to be the pattern and the mode of operation of that when ICE detains someone, it takes them, and they don't put them in the system where they can be located as what we have shared with each and every one of you, how to locate someone, but it has been taken somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks to and be able to find someone in the system, in the locator. So that has been one of the challenges. There has been also from organizations and efforts through the legal channels to challenge that, and allow someone who is detained to have access immediately to such as a phone call, and also have access to legal services. But and so that's something that we have seen, very unfortunate.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
and the other thing with this too, right? It's the way with all these rights where so many people still being detained without being let out. On top of everything that Winston said, I think, and this kind of gets to another question that we had here, which is how does one hold them accountable when our government has no checks and balances anymore? If I had the appropriate training to adhere to the constitutions and laws. So I think so on some of these things, this is where hearing from community is important, and also, recording and being a part of this effort is so crucial. I'm going to go back to the Rapid Response Network, right? I think the way that organizations like the ACLU and Churla are able to get information about these horrendous civil rights violations is through the community and through you all in recording, helping out your neighbors. And so it's super important for you all to, if you are seeing these like blatant violations of your rights, for you to contact organizations like Churla, the ACLU immediately, because Winston mentioned the TRO, right, which is a temporary restraining order, which is our big litigation, Vasquez versus Noam, which was filed like weeks ago around the ICE raids. And the only reason why that litigation was possible was because we had so much footage from community members like yourselves documenting these blatant civil rights violations. So, if we don't enforce our rights, then the government is never going to protect them, right? So it's up to us to defend our rights and to do our part in order to keep these rights something that is not being taken away. So that's kind of to everybody here, right? That's the role that we all play, is ensuring that these rights, that you not only know them, that you tell other people about them, you do these trainings, and also that you're participating in your local movement. So really plugging in the local rapid response, that's really the way to connect and help us out in this movement. Let me see what other question, Chirla. How can we keep ourselves safe from people making false reports to ICE? Someone walking by called my friend racial slurs and threatened to call ICE on her just because she spoke Spanish on the phone.
So there's two responses to that. One is how to keep us safe. So information, as you pointed out, Luis, and I cannot overemphasize that, is that if we inform ourselves, the more we do, the more we're going to know our rights. And the more, for instance, if somebody calls ICE on someone, right, and they come to my house, now we discuss and we learn what to do. The first thing not to do is do not open the door if they come to my house. Even if they show up to my house, allegedly because of someone actually reported me and so forth. So my next responsibility will be to demand them to show me a warrant, right? And so now I need to identify which warrant and to slide it under the door before opening the door and so forth. But once again, this is one way. Now, the second part to the second part answer to that is also that I want to also remind, and I love the question, and thank you to the person who asked this, because this allows me to speak to something that is also that we didn't touch about it, but it's also very crucial that our community understand, especially our immigrant community, is about hate crimes. So because if you are a victim of a hate crime, racial slurs or anything, whether you have been physically a victim or non-physically victim of hate crimes, it is okay to report that, because that can open the door also for additional immigration processes that may lead to perhaps a permanent residency through certain crimes and so forth. So there are also services and resources specifically for individuals who are victims of hate crimes. So it is important, and I would like to invite each and every one of you that if you become a victim of a hate crime, you can report it, certainly report it to the local police officers, and also you can call us and we can refer you and connect you to the services and resources for those who have been victims of hate crime. So it is important not to let anyone um, uh, uh, touch us or harm us. So we can speak up, and you can certainly report this to local police agencies, obtain a police report. But also to find out more about services and resources, contact our immigrant assistance line at Chirla. Yeah.
There's a question. There's a very specific question. And my husband and I were married November 2024. In the process of filling out paperwork with Chirla. How safe is my husband, and should we worry? I do feel worried. I feel like that's for that person to call the number, right?
Yes. Yes. So for the person who asked about their current immigration process, it is crucial. Number one is your privacy. We're going to respect your privacy. We will not discuss any details about your case. Nevertheless, I would certainly invite the person who asked the question, who have a case pending or in process, to reach out to us right away, please, and speak to the my colleague who may have been in charge of the your case and the our legal department. And please do so and call so that they can sit down with you and answer and address any questions that or doubts or that you may have.
And then there was a question that came in if it's open 24/7, the hotline.
The hotline is for those to report. It's from It's 9 to 5. But it's open on the weekends, Saturday and Sundays. So we're constantly, my colleagues, we're checking on messages, calls, even during the week, particularly because of the raids and the ICE operations that we've seen. So feel free to call. But for the for referrals, for those who want referrals of immigration attorneys or organizations that provide legal services at low cost or no cost at all, please call our immigrant assistant line, and Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. till 5, and just ask my colleagues that you're calling, requesting a list of referrals for immigration legal services.
Great. And just a quick time check. It is 7:08. I know we got to wrap up pretty soon, so we'll maybe just take this last question, which it's a two-parter, it seems. What is the best way to handle being dragged off this tree without any ID questions, to refuse to look at our documentation, the grabbing any people and remove them? What do we do next? Also, refusal to contact anyone. What can we do? I have seen these people refuse to show ID as a bystander. What can I do? Yeah, I mean, I think some of what we said, there's only so much we can do. But I think it's important, right, that one, we document, we verify, and that we report things. So if you can try to verify that it's, I think there was a question about how do I know who these people are? There are various guides out there, and I'll put it in the chat. And then the follow-up, that, the ACLU has done a post about this. So has many other entities about how to identify the different agencies. I understand it's hard with them all having masks and no signs that sort of indicate, but it's still worth noting. Try figuring out what kind of cars, where it happened. I think getting these details and then reporting that to your local rapid response network, honestly, is, as a bystander, that is more than enough to help us out, figure out how to proceed from here. And so that is kind of some of the advice. There's other information that your local rapid response can let you know as well on how you can assist as a bystander. But I think the top three things I usually tell community is that, right? Verify, document, and report. Cool. All right. Well, I think that is it on our end. On questions, I know we are running out of time, so maybe we'll just close out here. Thank you all so much for inviting us. Thank you for listening to us and sharing a little bit about your rights. Encourage everybody to check out our websites. For us, it's aclusocal.org. There is a bunch of resources on there. Really encourage everybody checking it out and reading up on some of these things. And more importantly, one, we want to thank Senator Pérez for inviting us to this town hall and creating the space, right, to be able to share these rights with you all. And also huge shout out to the Senator Pérez's team, who has been hard at work making this event happen. But Winston?
Yes, thanks, Luis. I want to echo the same thing. Shout out to Senator Perez, and of course her extraordinary staff that has actually made this possible. I want to thank you and our colleagues from ACLU, but more importantly, I want to thank each and every one of you who join us and who will share this information. And we want to leave you with this message: you as a community member, you are valued, and you're not alone, and you will not be alone. We will be there and do everything within our power to push back against this cruel attacks. And so you're not alone. And thank you so much for creating this space as well to engage and share some information that is valuable with each and every one of you.